G'day mates, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be going across the heats list that just got announced. We have the official heat list, so this is exactly what it's going to be. Unless somebody now gets banned between now and the heat starting this weekend, this has to be it. And instead of going through every single region, what I wanted to do first was just take a look at the NA East heat specifically and give you my thoughts and my top 8 pick to qualify out of each heat, because I want to wait a little bit to do some more research on the other regions. I don't follow them quite as closely as NA East, where I feel like with the hundreds of hours of scrims I've watched this season and tournaments of NA East, it'd be good for me to at least give my thoughts on what I think the best teams of each heat are and why. And then I'll do EU, NA West, OC, and all the other regions I follow in the next few days. I also want to get some drop spots maps made, but some of these teams have already massively changed their drop spots to where we thought they were previously going. So I want to wait for all that to settle before I make those. For example, Zayt, Saf, and Stretch aren't even going to be dropping on Hydro Dam anymore. They've gone to Sweaty. So a bunch of people are changing, but these are just going to be my first impressions and my first thoughts of who I think is going to qualify out of each heat in NA East. At the end of today's video, I also want to take a chance to talk about this preseason that just got announced by Fortnite, how we're going to have the competitive season start before tournament starts so we can get a gauge of how the meta is going to work. And I just want to cover what that means for cash cups, what that means for your hype, and what that means for when FNCS is starting, because we got a guaranteed start date for the next FNCS. Looking at the heat list overall, it was actually a lot more balanced than what the last one was. The one that we originally had based on consistency has now changed. I haven't seen anyone that's banned on NA East, so I don't know why the NA East heat list has changed like EU did. But either way, the new heat list, in my opinion, is actually far better. It's a really balanced heat list. I can hardly pick which ones I think are better. If you had to press me to pick one or two, I would probably say, in my opinion, Heat 1 and Heat 4 are the most stacked, and Heat 2 and Heat 3 are still very stacked, but not quite as bad. I think it's mostly because Heat 1 and Heat 4 have a really good average, but they pretty much have like 4 teams that I would guarantee to make top 8, like put any amount of money on it unless something goes horribly wrong. So I think that's why, in my opinion, they're a little bit harder. Where Heat 2 and Heat 3, I've really only picked 3 teams that I would put a good amount of money on guaranteed making top 8. You guys always ask me to do tier lists, and I've always told you I don't like doing tier lists because I want to be able to talk about how good one team is without putting the other teams down. I don't want to say this guy's really good, this guy's terrible. So the point of today is I'm going to pick out the 8 teams that I think are the best in each heat in no order. They're just the 8 best in my opinion. If for some reason you haven't been following the FNCS format, the reason why I've picked 8 is because the top 8 from each heat are going to go automatically through to the grand finals. The teams that come from 9th to 16th are all going to be put together to play off in the reboot round, which is a single match. Whoever wins that match, whoever gets the victory royale, is going to go through into the grand final to make the 33rd team. So that's why I picked 8, because these are my teams that I think will go through to the grand final. Starting off with heat number 1, my top 8 is Bucky, Kanata, Macwood, Aspect, Zuni's, Npen, Riversan, Lazar, Kaz, Leo, Ved, XMB, Joji, Tabs, and Who Fishy, Jampa, Nosh, and Paper, Okus, Blake, and Ronaldo, and Clicks, Booga, Bizzle. If I had to pick 4 teams out of that I think are guaranteed to go through, my favorite 4, it'd be Bucky's team, Leo's team, Okus' team, and Clicks's team. I mean, going down this list, Bucky, Kanata, Macwood, they are literally top 3 teams right now. There is no chance they don't make it through, as I'm sure they're going to be uncontested Craggy, which is just always ridiculous for them. So that's an absolute no-brainer. Aspect, Zuni's, Npen is a very underrated team in my opinion. I think they're going to have uncontested Salty if they're still going there, but again, I'm going to do drop spot maps in the next few days. Riversan, Lazar, and Kaz is one that I think people are going to question me on because they haven't been placing very well, but that's because they've been going head-to-head every single game with Creo, Avery, and Illist out at Lazy Lakes, and they did go down 5-1 last time. I fully accept that I don't think they have their match when it comes to spawn fighting, but in a heat that they're not in, I think the way they play endgame, especially with Riversan, is phenomenal. So I think if they get Lazy Lake uncontested, they'll be completely fine. Leo, Ved, XMB is one that I know will surprise a lot of people, but this trio, in my opinion, is the most underrated trio in NA East. XMB in particular, I think, is actually one of, if not the most underrated players in NA East. Young team that I think when people watch them stream, make fun of them because of how frantic their comms are and how loud they are, and they're quite a young team. But if you actually pay attention, the way they move, the way that XMB leads this team is ridiculous. And I know a clip went up recently of Scoped and Has and Tragics destroying them on Zayt Hill a couple times. I get that. I do think mid-game fighting and the way they're playing their early game right now isn't the smartest, but overall, I think same with Riversan's team, with Scope's team not being being in this heat, I think they're going to absolutely dominate if they get their drop uncontested and consistently work into endgame. Joji Tabsu Fishy was one I was a little bit scared to pick because most of the time I watch them, they're messing around, they're just having fun, they aren't taking it too seriously. But I think this team, if they had to buckle down and really focus like they will in heats, I think they're going to be a shoe-in to dominate, especially if they're just aggroing high ground, because in this lobby right now, really the two main teams that I think will be going height the most will be Bucky and Clixes, and that's not too bad. It's a pretty decent game to go high ground in, a pretty decent heat, especially with the scoring format. Then we have Jamper, Nosh, and Paper. Now this one's a little bit of a weird one for me because sometimes they do really, really well. Most recently in week 3, their first few games, they were starting off red hot, they were dominating. The only problem is, again, they always seem to get contested at Coliseum, so as long as they don't get contested, they've shown that they can pull out some ridiculous points. They did so well in those first few games on the weekend, but then as soon as they started getting contested, Coliseum just doesn't have the loot for 2 teams. So as long as they're uncontested, absolute shoe-ins. Okas, Blake, and Ronaldo. Ronaldo is, in my opinion, the most underrated player when it comes to getting teams to grand final stages. He really does just show up on the day and clutch up. I think last season he qualified with 3 separate teams, all with only 1 weekend to do it. So when set lobbies matter, when heats matter and qualifiers matter, Okas, Blake, and Ronaldo I think will show up in a really big way. And then Clicks, Booger, Bizzle is Clicks, Booger, Bizzle. First week they played, they dominated. They set over 200 points. They won 3 of their 6 games. And I think from watching them recently, they've only gotten better as a team as far as chemistry goes, especially. I really, really am impressed with how Bizzle's just stepped back, dropped the ego when it comes to being an IGL, has really let Booger take over when it comes to the end game comms. He's still leading the team phenomenally when it comes to early game, but I really like that end game Booger and especially Clicks Tarping has kind of taken over and really started to dominate. So they're an easy pick. They came first for a reason, and I can't see them getting contested at Sweaty in this heat either, so I think things are looking really good for them. Moving on to Heat 2, my top 8 is Colazo, D-Roller, and Class, Zate, Saf, and Stretch, Knifer, Accept, and Spade, AV, Shark, and Knight, Niddle, Mikey, Clarity, Zypher, Nut, and Twexy, Glace, Zexo, Chaotic, Crumbler, Nexi, and Mars. Now, of those, I only have 3 that I'd be really confident saying are going to make it, and that's Colazo, D-Roller, Class, Zate, Saf, and Stretch, and Niddle, Mikey, and Clarity. Colazo, D-Roller, and Class is a no-brainer. They absolutely dominated, winning week number 2 qualifiers. A lot of people put that down to the snowball launcher, the big chill. They only had that 1 game and they still ridiculously popped off. And I think this is due to the fact that Colazo, D-Roller, and Class haven't got a chance to really show the region just how good they are right now because of how contested they were at caddy corners, every single scrim, every single cash cup, and every single FNCS. Now that they're uncontested, and I believe in Heat 2 they'll be uncontested again, they're just going to pop off. They were even contested in week 2, but it was by a team that just got straight steamrolled through anyway, so they just got surge and eliminations. My biggest concern will be if they're uncontested, how are their surge routes looking, because they've always had their spawn fights to rely on for surge, but we'll see. I think they'll figure it out. Zate, Saf, and Stretch. It's Zate, Saf, and Stretch. They're going away from Hydro Dam to Sweaty Sands, which Zate put on Twitter, which I am super, super excited by, and makes me want to pick them even more. I do think Hydro Dam to this day has been a really bad choice for them, and I hope this is a sign that if they make grand finals, which I'm almost positive they will, they could change it up again. It's just, there's so much less RNG in the drop, and it's a drop that if they're contested on, just makes so much more sense to fight. They know how to fight it. They know how to rotate. Hydro Dam is just the absolute worst 50-50 drop. The better team won't win consistently out of that drop. It's just whoever gets down first, whoever gets decent guns. And the way that it works, even if you are contested and you win, because you couldn't split up as wide as you want, like Flush Factory and getting the, the slurp truck and getting all the ghost mushrooms, it slows down the whole rotate. So even if you win the spawn fight 6 times out of 6, I still think they'd be so much worse off just because they've had to fight those few times. Knife for Acceptance Spade is one that I don't really know. I do really have high hopes for them. Every time I see them in scrims, I see them playing really consistently, but it's like just inside that top 10 consistent when it comes to end game placements. It's never that consistent top 5. A few times I've seen their team on high ground, they've been bullied off really easily. I want to see them have a bit more confidence because I do think it's a super underrated team. AV, Shark, and Knight is one that's going to surprise people, but I'm still holding on to the fact that the AV, Shark, and Knight of last season was top 3, one of the best teams, revolutionizing how teams play low ground. I haven't seen them in that position recently. They really kind of have fallen off the face of the earth, but especially in this Heat 2, I don't see a lot of really strong low ground teams. They're not versing Centered Edgy, not versing a lot of Chaps teams, the other teams that like to go down there. So I think if they can just go back to their old form, they should really perform down there. Niddle, Mikey, and Clarity are the kings of Dirty Docks. They have been for the longest time, and now Dirty Docks being as strong as what it is, I really think they're going to pop off in this game, and I think they're going to be the main team that's going to try and contest and bully Zayt, Saf, and Stretch off high ground. I just think with that drop spot, uncontested or even contested, they're just too strong to go against. People also kind of, they don't look as much about chemistry like I do and how long a team's been together. It scared me a little bit that at the start of this season, they did split up, but since going back together, they look so ridiculously strong. And there's a reason why in my top 5 picks of teams that are the best in this whole region to win FNCS, I put that in a previous video, by the way, 4 of them have been a team since at least before last FNCS. So I really do rate heavily teams that have stayed together, especially when it comes to the big stage days like this where you really have to clutch up and qualify. I mean, they're the teams that are going to come out on top. They're not going to get tilted. They're not going to rage at each other. They're going to play the game we know they can play. Zypher, Nut, and Twexy is an interesting one. I think Zypher, especially as an IGL, an in-game leader, is a player that really steps up the more and more stacked lobbies get. So the better the lobbies get, the better Zypher performs. And I think with Nut and Twexy behind him fighting as well as what they do, with the chemistry they have, because Nut and Twexy have been playing together for seasons now, I do heavily rate that team. This is one that people might meme me for a little bit. Glaze, Zexro, and Chaotic. Honestly, I put him in there because I really want to see it happen. I want to see Zexro come back at the end of an FNCS, qualify in the final week, make finals, and then instantly go through to grand finals. I think Glace is very, very good for this team. I think it was a perfect fit for them. He's aggressive enough to fit their playstyle, but he also can lead a little bit, especially endgame. So I have high hopes for them. Now, Crumbler, Nexi, and Mars is a team that, for the same reason why I'm picking Arab, Nate Hill, and Innocence in the next heat, it's because of the current scoring format. You've got to remember, this scoring format for round 4 is different. It's 2 points for an elimination, and it's 30 points for a victory royale, but the top 3 gets half of that. So 15 points for getting 3rd, 2nd, and 1st combined. No, I think it's actually 16. It's ridiculous. It is so many points. And the way Crumbler, Nexi, and Mars especially played their qualifying week, they played to go high. That was it. They just wanted to have 1 or 2 really good games on high ground, getting a bunch of frags and getting the win. If they do that in one of these rounds or 2 of these rounds, that will secure them so many points. So I'm really looking at the teams that can have those 1 or 2 pop-off games, that have the aggression and the confidence to go for it, to do big things when it comes to these heats. My top 8 for heat number 3 is Arab, Nate Hill, and Innocence, Slacks, Acorn, and Jack, Commandment, Censored, Edgy, Dukes, Threats, and Chaps, Loopy and Trick and Nick FN, Frat, Snake, and Polarized, Trap, TJ, and Fop, and then Unknown, Casca, and Smacked. And my 3 main picks that I would put good money on making through to the grand finals is Slacks, Jack, and Acorn, Commandment, Censored, Edgy, and Dukes, Threats, and Chap. Arab, Nate Hill, and Innocence, like I just said, is the exact same reason I'm picking Crumbler, Nexi, and Mars. If you've watched this team at all, even more so than Mars's team, it is get height or lose. There is nothing in between. They will spend everything and full send it on height to win the game and frag out, or they're going to lose it after playing too aggressive. That is the way this team plays, and I think if they can get 2, maybe 3 games of doing that in this qualifiers, they will definitely make it through to the grand finals. Slacks, Jack, and Acorn, absolute no-brainer. I would be so shocked to see this team not make it. They've been messing around a lot for the last few weeks, and I hope that means they haven't lost their edge. Based on the Trio Cash Cup on NAE East a couple days ago, they won. They haven't lost their edge. It's just, yeah, it's Slacks, Jack, and Acorn. What do you want me to say? They're ridiculous. And hey, look, it's Commandment, Censored, and Edgy. Exact same thing. I would give up so much money if these 2 did not make it through into the grand finals. It would be so depressing to see. They are 2 of the strongest teams on NAE East right now, doing phenomenal things, and the way they play, Slacks, Jack, and Acorn do have a tendency to play the mid-ground layers into height. They'll play low if it presents itself, but Commandment, Censored, and Edgy are still the ultimate kings of low ground, so I don't think those 2 will clash too much. Dukes, Threats, and Chap is a little bit interesting for me, because I know Dukes, Threats, and Chap are really, really playing low ground, but I think Chap's respect for Commandment, Censored, and Edgy might lead him to be a little bit wary of playing low ground in this heat. He knows how phenomenal that team is, especially on the low ground. If he does play it though, if anyone could work it out and try to, you know, figure out a way to stop Censored, Edgy, Commandment on low ground, it would be Chap. You can't not pick him as a favorite to make grand finals when he does it every time with different teams. He always picks up underrated players, and at the moment, if you had to ask me the most improved team from week 1 of this FNCS to now, I would put it on Chap's team. He has really been hitting creative. His mechanics are getting way better. He's clearly figured out this team's playstyle, and they're absolutely popping off. The reason why you haven't seen them on the leaderboards is Chap's usual Chap's strategy when it comes to qualifiers is he just griefs anyone around him. He will full send it on any team on his rotate path to either make them not qualify or make them scared when it comes to heats. But when it comes to heats now, I think no hold bars, he's going to go for endgame, and I think they're going to pop off. Lupian, Trick, and Nick FN is an interesting one for me. I really like this team. I like how well they play when things are going right, but I do see sometimes things going wrong. Don't have too much to say about the French-Canadian team. I just have a lot of hope for them, and especially when I watch them when they're on top doing well, they really do perform. Frat Snake and Polarized again is an interesting one that not a lot of people have heard about because the Pleasant Park fight always kept them down. They've been fighting 1, 2, sometimes 3 teams at Pleasant Park since the start of the season, and when we saw them get it to themselves in, I think it was week 2, when Ronaldo's team left to go Stealthy Stronghold, they absolutely dominated. They were top 3 pretty much the whole qualifiers, and that's how they made it through into these heats, and I think they are some of the best fighters and most mechanical players, so it'll be interesting to see how they play their end games. They played them really well that week. I don't have as much exposure watching them end game because they do have those spawn fights so much, but hopefully they do good things. Trap, TJ, and Fop is one that I wouldn't have picked if it wasn't for the last few days. Pretty much the last few days I've been watching TJ's streams when it came to qualifiers in 3 and the Trio Cash Cups. It's just, they were really, really good at taking high ground seemingly for free. I don't know if they were just in really easy lobbies. It'll be interesting to see if they can do it in stack lobbies, but once they had it, they played it phenomenally well, phenomenally calm, and I saw them winning or getting top 3 super consistently. So again, with this round 4 format, I have to give it to them. Now, Unknown, Casca, and Smack, this is one that people are going to meme me for, people are going to laugh at me for. I know they haven't been performing that well coming up to this, but that's because they almost never perform when it comes to FNCS until it starts. So they have been a little bit slow with Cash Cups and FNCS this season. They're probably my last pick to make it through in this top 8, but I have high hopes for them, and I know because they don't practice as much during the off season and the preseason that when it comes to FNCS, every single week they improve and every week they get better. So I hope they can put it all together, because I would be really sad seeing Unknown Army not in the finals. I know he's not most of your guys' favorite people because of all the drama he's got in with different pros, but I'd like to see this team in there, especially because Smacked is one of my favorite people in the community, is just a top tier grinder. My top 8 for Heat 4 would be Cloudinator, Bumboy, and Script, Furious, Calc, and Sebi, Daymir on Reverse, P-God, Elysian, Jelty, Narwhal, Crunchy, and Zlem, Osp, Bully, and Frist, DJed, Ages, and Skittles, and Creo, Avery, Illest, with my top 4 guaranteed to go through being Furious's team, Day's team, DJ's team, and Creo's team. Cloudinator, Bumboy, and Script is one that I think will catch a lot of people off guard, but Bumboy, since coming from NA West to NA East, didn't really kind of turn too many heads at the start, but recently in the last few weeks, he has been playing so insanely consistently in the qualifying weeks, in the Cash Cups as well, and I think with this format, with them getting really consistent top 5s, especially in placement, if they can clutch up a few of those top 3s, making sure they get inside the 3rd, 2nd, or 1st placement in at least 3 games, I do really think they'll have the points to carry them through. Furious, Calc, and Sebi, a newly formed team. This is an interesting one. I'm a little bit scared to pick this one only because if they're playing well and if things are going hot, they are going to dominate. But if things go wrong, if they're contested or one of them gets picked off by getting triple dropped on or something like that, it is where I'll see this team potentially go down a little bit. Furious has a tendency to not work very well with teams in the past. It's why he's such a good solo player with so much potential, but really does get dropped from teams a lot. From what I can see, it's just things always get a little bit heated there, and I mean, it's with Calc as well. I actually think Calc as a player has been reforming massively, and not a lot of people are giving him enough credit for really kind of turning a new leaf and moving away from the toxic side, but it doesn't mean when the pressure's on, do I think he'll get frustrated, especially when clashing with Furious. I mean, they have the Kami split as well. If they can get the Kami split uncontested, it is such a ridiculous drop that we've seen, I think, the highest win rate of almost any, or qualifying rate of almost any drop on the map. So if they can get it to themselves and no one's griefing it, they're going to be looking great. Daymir on Reverse, they're your trio FNCS champions. They haven't been scrimming a lot, so a lot of people haven't been able to see how good they are. The main team they were running into problems with when they were dropping Salty Towers was Aspect, Zunies, and NPen. I have a feeling they won't be going Salty Towers, but I'll wait until all the drop spots settle. But either way, you can't count out the ex-FNCS champs who managed to win last FNCS with, I think it was like a 12 or 14 chest split over near the John Wick houses. It wasn't even with a POI, so I know they'll be fine. P got Elysian, Jelty, the Hispanic trio. I love them. I rate them really, really highly. I know they've been having some kind of issues, I guess, with chemistry. It's kind of hard when I don't speak Spanish, but I know they've talked about how they do want to split up for next FNCS, and they already tweeted how they're looking for new teammates for Cash Cups, but I think they'll be able to pull through and make it through the heats into grand finals. I don't know how well they'll do in grand finals, but I've got them to at least make it through heats. I know I made a joke about this, and I know Narwhal put it on Twitter and made me look like a bit of a dickhead, but I do have high hopes for Narwhal, Crunchy, and Zlem. I'd love to see them make it out of heats. I do think they're a team that has a lot of chemistry, even though they're a newly formed team. They get along really, really well, so I think they'll be able to pop off. Ozbully and Frist is an interesting one. You don't get to see them play too much endgame because they're usually contested, but they managed to come top 10, even well contested in their qualifying week, so I think a top 8 is very, very doable, especially with how I know they're going to play really aggressive endgame. There are a few teams in this lobby that will be able to dominate high ground, but if they can get it once or twice and they have their aggressive early and mid games like I know they will, I think with those 2 points per elimination, they'll be able to step up. DGen, Ages, and Skittles, they're one of my picks to win the whole thing. DGen, Ages, and Skittle have been playing together for so long. I love their drop split being the kind of Orchard, Triple House, near Steamy Stacks area. I don't know if they're still going to be going that. I imagine they will, since they've been going that all season in Elite, and it's just a phenomenal drop with teammates that get along really, really well and enjoy having fun together, so I know the pressure won't be too high on them during the heat, so I think they're going to pop off. Creo, Avery, and Illust, exact same thing. A favorite to win all of FNCS. They're not contested now, like I said, by Riversan, Lazar P, and Kaz like they normally are, but I don't know if that'll be a good or bad thing. The same reason why I'm nervous for teams like Calazo that are used to being contested. I want to see how Creo, Avery, and Illust perform when it comes to getting Storm Surge tags. Lazy Lake does have good rotations for Surge. They have the vehicles. I don't think they'll have a huge issue, and obviously Creo, Avery have both proven themselves multiple times in FNCS finals and grand finals. Illust is Illust, so I've got high hopes for them. All right, if you made it that far, much love. Thank you so much. You are a true supporter. I know that was a longer video. If you did like this longer style, please chuck a like on and let me know in the comment section down below, because I will do this for the other regions. NA East is obviously the region I follow the most, so I really can add a lot to each team, but I can do it for the other regions too if you guys like it. So let me know. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.